Hi guys, we are going to discuss about the solid design principles, right? So it is acronym for some of the design principles that we often use in our software design or even at architecture level, and we can use it at lower levels too. So from solid principle today, in this video I'm going to talk about the first S, that stand for SRP. That means the single responsibility principle. So what it states, it says that a certain class, right? So class or certain modules should have only one and one responsibility uh, to function on. So what will happen if you put more than one responsibility to, and why this? We will talk in a little bit that why this is the case. Like what will happen if you don't do that? So what happen if you blindly follow any principles? So things will work out indefinitely, but you will never learn the reason. For example, so there are many religious belief on which you may think that it is not important, right? You say like it doesn't make sense why to follow this. Why you say that? Why you are skeptical about it? If you thought deeply, because there is no reason to support that belief. So what happens? So if there is no reason involved in any policy or any principle, then it's hard to follow it blindly. And as a human, we want reason to believe on anything. So that's why. So I'm not saying that you should use this principle. Just understand how to use it and what it is. You should understand why this principle came into picture in first place, right? Why? What will happen if we do not follow this principle, right? So okay. So now let's get back to the SRP single responsibility principle. It says that it came after the programming came in 1945 started, and in 1960 or 70 they discovered the OOPS programming concepts, so that we will program in the OOPS, so that they can divide the program into individual modules, like smaller components, right? Building blocks. So what it says, essentially SRP states that every class or module should have one and only one reason to change. One reason to change. So let me give you the example. A class should have a single responsibility or job. So uh, okay, sorry, I was distracted by some outside noise. But yeah, let's again carry on. So now this might sound simple enough, right? But it can actually be quite challenging to apply in the practice, and to identify it is also not that straightforward. After all, how do you know when a class has more than one responsibility? First, you have to identify if the class has more than one responsibility, right? And then you have to separate it. Then you can say that hey, this is violating the SRP principle, and we should avoid it. And before that, let's discuss. Let me give you the examples. Say we have a class called order. Okay, this class name is order, and it is what this class do. It creates the order and it processes the order, right? Now it has kind of two responsibility, right? Creating order and processing order. So we can say that it's violating the SRP principle, and we should separate. Instead, we can create an order class, and we can segregate these two responsibility into different class. Create order, right? And then what it is, process order. Similarly, and so now it is like segregated. So similarly, I can give you a couple of more example. Suppose there is a user class, right? User class is doing both authentication and authorization. Auth Z, you usually we say authentication, we use auth n acronym, and then auth Z, right? So what happens is that it is still we are doing two things in single class, so we should segregate out. So now the main interesting part it. So like first, to adhere the SRP principle, we should make class as more adhere to the principle, like we should make our class to organize in a such a way that so that it should be follow, like contain only single principle. That's all. Now understand what will happen if we don't do that. That's the good part, right? And okay, so let's say that you are doing same thing. Okay. If you don't follow the if you don't follow the SRP, your code become difficult to understand and modify in the longer run. So you are keep getting more and more responsibility in single class. So your class becoming is large, right? And you may often do not going to update the documentation of class according to the new responsibility. So it turns out that your code will become messy, and it will be less maintainable. So you can also say that your code is not modular enough. So suppose you want to use some feature of authentication authorization in user class, right? So you have to again write this code, because you cannot use the user class. It is not independent. It is not modular. So you are losing the modularity of the code. You have to the code duplicacy will increase, right? And the other best point, which most of the developer miss, is like code become harder to test. Like testing will be your complex, because as if in your code is like, if your class is a smallest individual unit, it is easy to test it. But if you're adding more and more responsibility, the testing may get become difficult. And the code will become less scalable. So there are lots of negative points that I have mentioned. So yeah, it's look like if you and it easy to write, it easy to do not it easy not to follow the SRP, because while writing code, it will make more sense, right, to write the logic in same place, because you are thinking in that certain domain. But in longer run, it will might cause the issue. So you can do one thing. You can, for the boilerplate code, I would not say that you should adhere the SRP principle very strictly. But what you can do, you can add some of the logic like single class. But on next change, you should create segregate the responsibility to adhere the SRP, because it will going to affect your code base overall. So yeah, that's it for the single responsibility principle, and I'm going to add more example often if I encounter in my daily practices. And one last thing I want to say to all of you. So this design principle is very easy to understand and very easy to learn, but it is very not that much intuitive to use into your daily practices and indulge into your like this principle to what I'm saying, it is hard to indulge these principles, design principle, into your coding practices. So you have to little bit conscious about it in the starting, and then in long run it will become going to become part of your experience. That's all for today.